Hello everyone, here we are, live stream number 13, live from the homestead number 13 rather, and it is Sunday. Obviously couldn't do yesterday because I was out on a foraging course, but we are on, let me check, what day is it? We're on day 26 of my self-sufficiency September challenge. So we have, almost gone another week. We've got 4 or 5 days left. And I am doing pretty well, I think, doing really well. Really happy with the diversity of the range of foods that I've been eating, Oh, here we go. My iPad down here has just kicked in. Sorry about that. So yeah, really happy with the diversity of what I'm eating. I'm happy with the sort of the quality of what I'm eating, for sure. And the only sort of two struggles really now are just when I'm out and about in the big wide world, when I'm out there, and the temptations and the cravings that come with that proximity and exposure to junk food, and the time and effort and energy that it all takes, because it's definitely a lot of work. And I think I've had quite a lot of thoughts on that and on the whole journey towards self-sufficiency and what that kind of means for it. And I know I've done a podcast episode in the past on, how much land do you need to be self-sufficient, but I think I need to do one on how much time do you need to be self-sufficient. Morning, William. Thank you for joining us. So, I think they're two different sides to the same coin. I think, you need a bit of space if you want to be self-sufficient, but the time you need can be even, more exorbitant, I think, because just the effort, the pre-planning, it's constant, and my wife is absolutely sick to death of it. Of the constant mess, the constant washing up. I'm constantly, taking over the kitchen. I'm constantly cooking, preparing, whatever. And, that's to the detriment of my garden. My garden is kind of falling a little bit behind. There's no two ways about it. Hi, Liam. How are you doing? So I think at the end of September, in the first part of October, I think I'm going to take the opportunity to, tap into all those things I've not been able to have for the purpose of simplicity, for the purpose of ease and convenience. So that's not to say I'm suddenly going to start eating, 100% shop bought food. Far from it. We'd never do that here. We just don't need to. But I'm definitely going to take my foot off the pedal with regards to some of the ingredients I use, spices and herbs and, salt and pepper and things like that. And also some things like pasta. We'll go back to using shop-bought items in those regards, because the amount of time it will free up for me, and I really need that time, because I'm going out there in the garden now, and our vegetable garden is just full of abundance. There's so much out there that's ready to be harvested. We've got the first of our sort of long season crops that are ready. So a lot of our squash are ready to harvest. Our pumpkins are ready to harvest. We've got beans that are they've just gone crazy this year. Courgettes. We've got onions, we've got brassicas, we've got, cabbages, and my wife's had tremendous results with her broccoli. So we're starting to harvest loads of that now. And we need to turn our mind towards preserving some of this stuff. And I just don't have time to do that on top of the, just the general sustenance stuff. Liam P. Raynow, I've got a question about your September challenge. Does roadkill count? Yeah, I think 100% that would count. I mean, in terms of hunting and trapping and that kind of thing, absolutely. I haven't had a chance to do any of that. Now, when it comes to, trapping and hunting, I'm quite happy and comfortable to hunt and trap rabbits, pheasants, all those kinds of things. We just haven't needed to. And couple that with, the time, it's just, we've not had the time to do any of those things. I'd love to get into a little bit of rabbit hunting. For all the space we have here and what have you. Hi, Vicky. So glad you could join us. All the space we've got here, it's amazing. We almost never see a rabbit in the garden, and I don't know why that is. No idea. But I'd like to get into a bit of rabbit hunting and a little bit more trapping. But it's like I say, for the remit of this September, it just wasn't necessary. We've got a freezer full of pork meat. We've got our chickens, got our ducks, which again is another resource we haven't even had to tap into. I really thought that by this time in the month, I would have harvested those ducks and we'd be making meals of them. But again, we just haven't had the necessity to do that, coupled with the time. So I think time is the big thing. Time really is the biggest factor to the challenge and the challenge side of it. Hi, Elliot. So glad you could join us. So yeah, that's, you know, and that's been ongoing, and it's compounded when I have extracurricular activities. You know, my work's been fairly full on. I've been working pretty much full weeks, which, you know, I try to avoid for, you know, obvious reasons, and the fact that I derive some of my income from other streams like the foraging courses, but it's just not been the case. I've had to work Monday to Friday, pretty much full days. I mean, I'm very, very lucky. You know, my days are early. I finish early because I come home to milk the goats and what have you. But even so, those are days that are kind of accounted for. And then at the weekend, when I've got foraging courses, which I've had on 2 subsequent weekends now, my daughter's birthday as well, which has kind of taken up 2 subsequent weekends because she had friends staying yesterday. And obviously last weekend, we had a big family do for her. So, you know, all these things put the pressure on my time. And that's been the biggest challenge, I think. And it's very easy to look back on the month, or, you know, because it's almost over now. We've almost done it. And it's very easy to look back on it and think, well, it hasn't been too difficult. But there are lots of areas that have been neglected. And like I say, my garden is definitely one of them. I've got some seeds that I really should have sown that I haven't sown. I've got lots of weeding to do out there. And again, lots of harvesting and preserving now. So as soon as we hit into October, I think my focus is going to massively change, and these videos will change, and we will 100% be looking at harvesting, preserving, and all those kinds of things. And I'm really looking forward to that as well. I'm looking forward to the change. And hi, Jacqueline. So glad you could join us. And that's a great time to join us, actually, Jacqueline, because one of the things I wanted to talk about today is an extension of the comment you left on yesterday's video. And that is, you know, I've already mentioned that I'm going to have this challenge as an annual thing. And for those of you who follow the podcast as well, the Self-Sufficient Hub podcast, you'll know that I've kind of made plans to make it the bookend at the end of a season. So season 1 of the Self-Sufficient Hub podcast will end shortly after my September challenge ends. And I will take a brief hiatus of around a week or 2. And then we'll come back with season 2 of the podcast. And then that will be our annual rhythm from here on in, I think. There's several technical reasons why that's a good idea for me. But also I'd like to take the time to recharge my batteries and do a few other things. I've got a couple of books that I'm trying to get written, and, you know, having the extra time will help me there. So that's, you know, sets up this idea of this September challenge being an annual affair. And I thought it would be awesome if we could, as a community, all kind of take part in it. So I thought for next September, we could all start thinking about our own personal self-sufficiency challenges that we could undertake. So let me know your thoughts on that. Let me know if that's something you'd be interested in. Let me know if you'd like to participate, and let me know what sort of challenges would suit you. Now, of course, I've chosen a challenge that suits me. I'm allowed to barter things. You know, that's a rule I could have not had, but that's allowed me access to honey and flour. Now, obviously, next year, I'll be able to source all my own honey with any luck, and possibly even grains, who knows. But I think that's one of the aspects that I might take away for next year to, again, make it a challenge. So the idea will be that we all as a community come up with this idea. Perhaps we get sponsored and we raise some money for a charitable cause or something that's, you know, in line with all of our values. And I just thought it might be a nice way of connecting us all together and sharing our experiences. So whatever that would look like for you, you know, let me know. Maybe it is just you're going to be self-sufficient in fruit and vegetables for all of September. Maybe it is you're going to be self-sufficient 1 meal a day, or whatever it might be. Perhaps, you know, it's going to depend, everybody, on their circumstances and what they're able to do. Perhaps you're going to be self-sufficient in meat. Perhaps you're going to be self-sufficient in herbs. You know, depending on where you are in your journey, I think it would be a really nice activity, again, a communal activity that we could all get involved in, and we can each individually set our own bar. And the idea, at least for me, in my mind, how I envisage it working is that bar would be set. So it is a bit of a challenge, a bit of a stretch. So we're not just doing things that we would do all the time anyway. So, maybe you're going to be self-sufficient in homemade bread. You're only going to eat bread that you bake yourself for the month, whatever it is. So I'd love to hear your ideas about what sort of challenges would fit you. And like I say, I think it'd be a great idea for us all to get on board with that next year, because I can tell you from my experience this month, the connection that it's made between me and what I'm doing, the connection between, all the things that I'm doing on a day-to-day basis and the idea of self-sufficiency, the connection that it's given me to where our food comes from, which, even going into this challenge, I would suggest is probably a stronger connection than a lot of the population. And I would guess that most of you guys who follow me are in a similar situation, in a similar boat. You have similar values and ethics and thoughts about where your food comes from. But doing this challenge really brings into focus everything. It brings into focus what's easy. It brings into focus what's hard. It really elevates all the things that you're not self-sufficient in, and it puts them front and center and forces you to have a conversation with yourself about them and all the conversations that stem from that. So I was talking just yesterday on the foraging course that I led from here. We were walking around and someone was, because I mentioned this challenge, and someone said to me, someone who was on the course, basically said words, or as the conversation went on and as the walk went on, because it's a 4-hour walk, so we get to know each other a little bit. As the walk went on, I start to hear comments like, oh yeah, well of course it's, the way you live, and people assume from the outside with just a very cursory glance and a few conversations with me, people assume that I'm living this kind of pristine, self-sufficient lifestyle. And of course I'm not even close to it. And it's not until you start getting involved in it and deep down in it and really get tangled up in the weeds of your food production that you realize how false that is. Now, of course, I have been for a month and I'm thrilled by that. But one of the things that came out of this conversation with the lady that was on my course was I kind of said, and it refocused the attention back on something that I've mentioned a lot about the idea of actually being long-term completely self-sufficient and whether or not that's even desirable. And I kind of said that, even if I had all the time in the world, if I didn't have a full-time job and I had all the space and I had, all the infrastructure that I would desire, I think, at that point, you would still have a conversation with yourself where you would say, okay, shall I carry on sourcing my own sea salt? And I think the answer is, realistically, no, you wouldn't. And simply because the time and effort involved versus, the products that are available and the cost of them just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Now, of course, it's nice to be in a position financially where perhaps you can make more concerted choices with your purchasing and you can decide exactly what sort of products you're going to buy, where you're going to buy them, and you get more of a say with financial sort of stability and with a bit of financial freedom. And I'm not talking a lot, but a tiny amount of disposable income goes a long way to giving you the power to have more control and more decisions over the impact you're having on the food network, and also the impact you're having on what you're buying and what you're putting in your body and where that comes from and the provenance of this food and how the meat that you're eating is raised and all those kinds of things. Now, all that, if you're buying it, if you're using the commercial network of food production, all that comes with a certain amount of affluence, a certain amount of disposable income, being able to not buy the cheapest type of a thing in the shop. Now, not everybody is in that position. I'm well aware of that. And my background where I grew up, we certainly weren't in that position. And, you know, I am never, ever, ever preachy or judgy about other people's choices and about other people's conditions within which they're working. And I understand that, you know, for a lot of people, that choice isn't one that's on the table. But for those of us that do have the choice to, you know, perhaps spend a little bit extra on certain items, with that choice, with that ability, it gives us the choice to look a little bit deeper, look under the hood, and actually really connect to, you know, where food comes from. And it's a two-way street, because these are things that we're putting in our body, but it's also things that we get to impact by, you know, voting with our feet. Hi, Jeff and Deb. So just a quick hello, you're off to bed soon, understood. And yeah, speak to you soon, no doubt. The Allotment Kitchen Garden, hi everyone. Hi, Nat. So glad you could make it. Liam P. Rayner is doing an alcohol and caffeine-free challenge inspired by the daily videos. I'd love to know how that's going, Liam. Have you been doing that for, well, how long, when did you start? And yeah, how's it going? Let me know. But I was just saying that, you know, it's a two-way street between our choices when we spend our money on food. It's a two-way street insofar as not only does it impact what we're bringing into our kitchen and what we're doing with, you know, with our bodies and what we're putting in it, but it also actually tells a story to the people who produce our food, because we're voting with our feet. We're telling them where we want their focus to be and what we value. And that ultimately does start to make changes to the food production network. William Dillon, how close are you to be working much less at your full-time job, or has the need to move pushed that back a while? Well, interestingly, Dylan, the need to move is probably going to act as a bit of a catalyst. So I've just started an extension which is going to run up until about Christmas. And that, I think, is the last large building project I'm going to take on. And after that, I am going to strip back to 3 days a week. And the idea being that when we move, and again, I've got lots of kind of announcements about that to make. We've made a few decisions, but I'm going to save them until after September because my focus isn't really on it yet. But the idea is, at the moment, at some point in the next 6 months, we are going to be buying a field, I think. And at that point, I want to really, really start pushing a lot of the things that I already do, but I don't really put a lot of energy into pushing them, that deliver me that sort of income from doing the things I love. So once we've got our own piece of land that we own, then I can start thinking about doing things like building a learning centre or a visitor centre and all those kind of things there, which were never, ever, ever going to be possible as long as we were renting here. So I think, if anything, you know, it's going to bring those things forward. And, you know, my family and I are very, very lucky. You know, we're all healthy, we're all fit. My wife and I both work. So, you know, we have the option, you know, I can afford to work 3 days a week and, you know, we're not going to go bust or, you know, not be able to put food on the table. So, you know, I think that's definitely going to be the way forward. And everything with me is fluid, and I quite often make plans, but I very rarely stick to them. So we'll just have to wait and see. But like I say, in about a week's time, probably this time next week, actually, next Saturday or Sunday when I do next weekend's live stream, that might be a good forum within which for me to really start opening up about where we're going to be next. Because we kind of know, it's not 100%, and I haven't mentioned any of this, that I'm going to be talking about this on the channel yet to my wife, who's not here today. So I can't really say very much right now, but once I spoke to my wife and sort of got the green light, maybe next live stream, I will open up a little bit about what our plans look like as they start to solidify in front of us. But what I can say is that the future looks exciting, both for my family, but also for the channel. I think there's some really, really good, really channel specific stuff that's coming up that I'm going to have the opportunity to do that I wouldn't have had if things hadn't fallen as they do. So anyway, that's kind of where we are. So I've mentioned Jackie's not here right now. She's visiting her parents, and me and my children went and visited my nan today, who is 95. My nan lives with my aunt, who's also quite old. I don't know how old she is, but she's really quite ill. She suffers from emphysema, and she collapsed about a week ago, and was rushed into hospital, and she's currently on some breathing apparatus there. I think it's just a CPAP machine mostly, but she's actually quite struggling. She's in a fairly significantly poorly situation, and as a result, my nan is home alone at the age of 95, and she's just struggling to get around a bit. So we went out to see her this morning, and got our fingers crossed that my aunt makes a recovery and can get home soon. And but yeah, it's always a bit difficult when you have a family member who's poorly, but we've all got our fingers crossed for her. My nan won't be watching this. She doesn't watch YouTube, and she doesn't really use the internet. She'll be watching Jeremy Kyle on TV or Cash in the Attic or something like that, I'm sure, by now. But yeah, that was our morning, and then I dropped my children with my wife, who was on her way to her parents. So I am also home alone right now. I've just had, actually, before the live stream, just had some of that pork stew, the pulled pork stew from the slow cooker that you saw me cook recently. And for tea tonight is a roast dinner. And of course, I won't talk too much about that now because I'll document that on its own separate video. A couple of other things that I wanted to mention here. I've made a few notes in front of me. So I got an email from one of our patrons, Alex Todd. Now, Alex doesn't comment on YouTube, doesn't comment on social media. He's not on Facebook, but he does regularly email me. And he was saying that he undertook quite a significant detox some time ago. He actually did, I think it was a 10-day fast. I'm not entirely sure what his rules were, but during that period, he got significant cravings, as you might imagine, and did some research. And apparently, what happens is when we eat a lot of, or when we eat any kind of junk food, our body almost sort of firewalls that stuff and puts it away, puts it to one side because it's not particularly good for us. And then what can happen when we stop eating it is after a period of a few days, the body can kind of release it all. And it's upon that release that we almost get reminded of it. Our physiological existence gets reminded that these things exist, and that's when the cravings kick in. So, maybe that's what was happening with me. I do feel a little bit better now. I won't lie, I could very much eat some junk food, but I'm nowhere near feeling as bad about it as I was a few days ago, which was, significant. And so Liam's replied, since the 1st of September, I find night shift a struggle with the lack of caffeine, but it's not as hard as I anticipated. Good for you, Liam. Fantastic stuff. And so 2 questions then, Liam, 2 follow-up questions. Are you going to carry on with the regime in any shape? And have you found it easier as the month's gone on? Because, as you guys will all know, caffeine was definitely one of the things I was really struggling with or thought I was going to be struggling with at the start of this challenge. But as it happens, it's one of the things I found easier. I'm going to make this a fairly short live stream because I think I'm having you guys tell me, I think there's a few video issues. I'm not sure how good the feed is to you guys. When I'm looking down here, it's not particularly high fidelity. So tell me if that's coming through for you guys as well. And yes, my chips and salt did scratch an itch the other day. I needed them so bad. And I needed them so bad. And I do definitely, I do think I'm going to use, I'm going to make a few more of the potato wedges and just put a bit more salt on them because I've got it to share now. I've got it to spare now. Okay, guys, so there's a few issues with the stream for which I apologize. My Wi-Fi here is not great, but hopefully we'll be in a position that won't be the case in the future. So the last thing I just wanted to mention before I disappear, and it's a bit of housekeeping, that is just to say that I think if anyone who watches, not all necessarily, but watches a lot of my videos and listens to the podcast and is also in the Facebook group, the regular Facebook group, and would like to, or is interested in helping me out with a few admin tasks, then let me know, because I'd like some admin there. And I'm still better viewing than Jeremy Kyle. Yeah, thank you. Cheers, Vicky. Yeah, because there's some things I'd like to do, but I am, despite myself, I am an awful Facebook user. I'm not consistent with it enough. And there are a few things I'd like to do. So, you know, I'd like to, for instance, every podcast, I'd like to have a related post put up. And, you know, I'd like to do a few things that I'm just not consistent enough in my use of Facebook. And I know myself well enough to know that Facebook's a bit of a black hole for me. And the way I treat Facebook right now with my inconsistency is the best place for me in terms of my mental health. I can very easily find myself using Facebook sort of 7 or 8 hours a day if I'm not careful. So, you know, I want to avoid that. TM Garden Escape and Explore. Hi, sorry I'm late. No need to apologise. Thank you for joining us. I will apologise to you though, because we're going to wrap this one up fairly soon, just due to the nature of my internet connection today. It seems to be struggling a little bit. People are suffering with a few buffering issues. So I think, like I say, I'm going to wrap this one up fairly soon. But do give some thought to that. If that might be you, then, you know, reach out, get in touch, and we'll set something up. In an ideal world, it'd be great if we had a WhatsApp group with myself and a couple of admins in, and, you know, took it from there. So if that's something you'd be interested in, let me know. Otherwise, like I say, I think I'm going to wrap this one up. So I apologise for those of you who have only just arrived. And if you are interested, if you wait, I think this is how it works. Not being the technology guy, I might be wrong, but I think how it works. If you wait a few hours, what happens is the recording device that I use for this records it in HD, and it gradually uploads that. So over the course of the next few hours, sometimes it takes a day, this video will be available in HD and it will be much better quality. So if you've just arrived, maybe you want to wait for that before you go back and watch it. But before we all leave, just a quick reminder to press that like button and get in touch however you want to do that. Consider becoming a patron of the show if you're not already one. It makes a huge difference to me and what I'm doing in the future, where I'm planning to be and what I'm planning to do, and, you know, what sort of content I am going to be in a position to produce. So that's going to wrap it up. Thanks for watching, guys. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you all turning up, and whether you're watching live or whether you come later, I really appreciate it. And of course, I will be back tomorrow with another video documenting what I've eaten today. And we are on day 25, I think. We're on the home stretch, a few more days. And yeah, there we go. Thanks ever so much, everyone. And I will speak to you all really soon. Cheers.